What's up, everybody? My name is Wesley Shell, and this is my wife, Crystal. We are the pastors of the Burg Church in Harrisburg, North Carolina. And today we're going to talk about three big topics. We're going to talk about long distance relationships, marriage in ministry, and also life with a miscarriage. So, Crystal, why don't you share with everybody our story? We can start with how we met and got to a long season of long distance.
Well, I just decided to, just went home. I was raising support to become a missionary. And while doing that, I was working at a church plant in Charlotte. And I was in charge of the first impression. So I was setting up donuts and setting up coffee. And here comes this young buckaroo. I had on a purple shirt and I gave him a big hug. So glad you're here at church. We're glad to have you. Get some coffee and donuts. And I just thought he was adorable. He was 5 years younger though. So
Hey.
I just thought he was a little cutie. But after church, we went to this restaurant, and sweet little Wesley was just sitting all by himself. And I thought,
Wait
oh,
for it, boys.
this poor little fella. It's his first time visiting. He doesn't have any friends. Let me go sit with him. Turns out that was his trick all along. And so after that, I was like, I really need some help with some church stuff. Here's my number. I'd love for you to help me do some things. And 1 week later, we were sitting in the car. He drove me to church, and I said, hey, I'm leaving to be a missionary, but if you'll wait for me, I think we're supposed to get married. So that was it. 1 week.
First time that we hung out for real. So she was leading a youth ministry, very successful. She was doing a great job. Needed somebody to come and lead worship 1 week and upgrade the sound system, make sure everything was working. And that's when I told her, I was like, well, I'll come, but we have to ride together. And that's where that conversation was sparked.
You got me.
For me, in my perspective, I just exited a season, probably the longest season I had, which was like a whopping 6 months as a teenager of not having a relationship. And when I walked into the building, I saw Crystal and immediately knew that I was going to marry her. I turned to my friends, Easton and David, and I told them I don't know who this girl is, but I'm going to marry her. And David said, well, dude, she's like my sister. Our families are best friends. And I said, well, we're about to be brothers because I'm marrying this girl. And didn't even know her name yet, but I knew that she had a beautiful smile and she was serving donuts. So surely it had to be the Lord.
It's a win-win.
A win-win. And from that night on, it's this feeling sparked. And we definitely don't recommend meeting somebody for the first time. You just find out their name. And
maybe do like a background check or
yeah,
something
right.
first. I
And
don't
not
know.
just say, hey, I love you. We're supposed to get married.
Yeah.
But then a couple months goes by, raising support, you leave in August, and it's gone for just under 2 years to
Yep.
where?
I lived in the Amazon jungle in Peru for almost 2 years. We were part of a church plant team, and it was mostly just me and another girl. We were both 25 years old, and we would travel into the Amazon jungle and work with the children in the mornings, and then in the afternoon we would work with the ladies, and we lived in a tent on the river. That was it.
So Amazon jungle obviously is a big place, a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
Most people think that missionaries are going on this like paid vacation. That is not at all what this was.
Right.
Really in the trenches, sharing the gospel with people, coming into some crazy situations. What were probably let me ask let's ask what the most fun thing was that you got to do, and
Mm-hmm.
then one of the things that you were the most nervous about.
Well, so Catherine and I, we worked together. She's from Georgia. I'm from North Carolina. We'd never met before. We met in Peru in language school. We were in language school 6 months learning Spanish, and then they were like, okay, see you later. Have fun. And that was it. We did a lot of training and preparation before. But once we got there, we had a backpack. We had like 2 or 3 pairs of shorts, 3 or 4 shirts. I had 1 pair of flip-flops and like toothbrush, maybe shampoo, maybe soap. And we'd start well. We'd pack all those things in the backpack, but a lot of times along the way, as we did a lot of washing our clothes in the river or brushing our teeth with river water, that kind of thing. But kids and people would take our things. So we may start the trip with shampoo, deodorant, soap. But by the end of the month or 2 months, we just would have clothes taking them home, which was really fun because in America, it's like Amazon this, oh, I'm out of this. It'll be here tomorrow. But in the jungle, it was like, well, maybe in 3 months I'll get more of that, And until then, we're just surviving. But it wasn't anything that we felt overwhelmed or stressed about because the Lord always provided what we needed. There were a lot of times on the river, we'd go into a community and we'd have to ask permission from the chief if we could live there. So we'd set up our tent beside his little thatched roof house. And if he gave permission to live in the jungle with him in his little community, that meant he would take care of you. That was the promise that you're under my watch, I'm going to take care of you. And so the craziest thing truly was that we, a lot of times, were days away from any contact with anybody. We'd hop on a little plane, we'd fly a few hours, we'd get on a little boat, we'd drive like a canoe kind of boat. We'd drive for 2 days, stop, sleep, drive for 2 more days. And then, so it was like if there was an emergency, what would you do? And a lot of times, there were sicknesses. We were really sick some weeks. I had that rash, remember, that started like with my fingers, and then after a few days it was like slowly coming up, and it was like, well, I might come back to America with only one arm kind of thing. But there were no doctors, there were no creams or anything like that. So we just lived on faith and ate lots of rice. We ate snails, basically anything in the river. A lot of times we would be like, we don't have food for today, but we'd see some fishermen and we'd trade, like, oh, I'll trade you this cool thing for, a cup of rice or whatever.
So what would you say? So you got to do some fun things in there, lots of adventure, got to go to Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
That was awesome. But what would you say is the more nerve-wracking thing that you experienced, or something that most people would think is scary?
I think 2 single females just living in the jungle is scary.
Scary enough.
Yeah. And I think we didn't realize it in the moment because we were doing the Lord's work and we'd prepared and we read the books and we were excited and we knew people were praying for us. But I think, our parents were probably here like, I can't believe my daughter, fresh out of college, is living overseas. So every day truly could have been a disaster, but the Lord took care of us. There were a lot of witch doctors. There was a lot of darkness in the jungle. Most of the people were very obedient. Many of the chiefs were witch doctors. So we would come into it knowing we love the Lord. We are the only 2 people in this entire area who love the Lord, and we're surrounded by witchcraft and witch doctors. But they didn't come in angry or hurtful. He came in as, you're under my protection. I'm going to keep you safe from all the other men in the community, from anything that could happen. So that was a really cool experience that God used unsaved and darkness to protect us.
Something that could have been evil from looking on the outside to something that kept you safe to continue to do what you were doing.
For sure.
Because it benefited the community in a mighty way.
Right.
So
we went in as teachers.
Right.
So in the morning, we would work with the kids. We do some language stuff, but also Bible verses and songs and games and stuff.
So almost in between a year or 2 that we were apart for the first little bit, finishing some Spanish schooling, we got to talk to each other a little more often.
Yeah.
But then as she went into the jungle for the majority of the time, we got to Skype like once every 3 weeks or once a month. And I remember her putting her hands up in front of the camera and there just being this massive rash, and her hands looked like somebody blew into the rubber gloves at a doctor's office. They were so swollen. And I remember those moments. And I think through that time, I learned even more so how necessary it was for us to have a healthy relationship in the future. As we are now been married for almost 9 years in a couple months. We have 2 beautiful little girls, 5 and 3. And I really believe that was a necessary time for us to be where we are today. Maybe what are some things that you could encourage people who are walking through long distance relationships, or I think a major issue in dating today is that people give too much of themselves too quickly, or they'll jump into something deeper. Although we're saying that, and we did say we love each other, and we're getting married day one.
1 week,
But
yep.
what are some things that you did to get through, or how did God encourage you forward as you continue to walk in this relationship, but also be fulfilling such a major mission in a very far away place?
I think that starting our relationship, a lot of people were worried or concerned that I would lose my focus because I was so focused on being a missionary, and then you came into my life. So a lot of times when you start dating, couples do lose their focus. And maybe they don't lose it, but maybe it just gets on a different track. So I would say make sure you find out what you want to do, what the Lord wants to use you to do, and stay focused on that. But it's okay to bring somebody along and to do it together.
Yeah.
Because the Lord for sure changes our path. He moves us. He guides us. He's constantly directing us. I am still a missionary, but I'm a missionary here in America. You know, a lot of people are like, you're not going to be a missionary. No, I'm always a missionary. That's what the Great Commission is all about. He's commanded us to love people, whether that's at Food Lion, whether that's, you know, going to the grocery, like just buying my kids stuff at the store at Marshall's. Like, that's my mission field. Everywhere I go, my home, that's my mission field. So I would say, for sure, don't let a significant other or a friendship or a group of friends distract you from what God wants you to do. But also don't get caught up that it messes you up, that you're like, I can't get distracted, and then you stop living for him altogether.
You change your priorities. Yeah, you change your priorities at the wrong time, because in marriage, like my number one priority is my relationship to the Lord. My number two priority isn't being a pastor, and it's truthfully not even being a father. It's my relationship to my wife.
Right.
And then it's being a father, and then it's being a pastor. And I think sometimes people will shift into those priorities before it's time, and they'll allow themselves to change who they are, who they're called to be, what they're gifted to do, what their dreams and passions are for a relationship that potentially won't last.
Right.
And then they're jumping into something that they don't know that they can trust to float.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're trying to get into a healthy relationship, you're trying to find somebody, or you're already in a relationship, I think it's very important for you to communicate your dreams, vision, goals before you jump too deep into it. Do you want to have children? Do you want to live somewhere close by to your family? Whatever that looks like, to make sure that you're investing into what it looks like long-term to be a healthy thing. We knew, even though she was going to be gone for so long, that we had the same dream and vision of what our family would look like one day and what our household needs to look like. And that's why I was so confident while you were gone. So for like me as a guy, we're driven differently than girls are. I had to make sure that I was doing things that was bettering myself and keeping myself busy to keep myself out of temptation and distraction. So I hung out with my buddy, shout out Joey Gerard, like every day of the week. We picked up disc golf. We picked up something, some random sport that we figured out and fell in love with it and played all the time. And I just made sure that I was hanging around healthy people and doing things that put me in a position to be the healthiest, because the Lord spoke to me that this is the type of blessing I bring in your life, but you have to learn how to lead yourself before you start your family.
Right.
And that season was very necessary for me to prepare myself before I was to jump in a relationship, because a lot of times people will jump in relationships and they're not healthy themselves. And there's never a world where you can fix somebody or somebody will fix you.
Right.
You have to make sure that you're going in knowing who you are, knowing your relationship with the Lord, being confident before you jump into that relationship. So let's talk. Now we've moved past that season.
Yep.
We're no longer dating, praise God. And we are married. We've been married. October 10th will be 9 years of marriage. We've been together for 11 years.
It's 2013.
And it's been amazing. One of the things that we've had to navigate that is different in it's different in what you face and what you walk through, what you have to navigate as a married couple, and that's being in full-time ministry.
Right.
So Crystal and I were in youth ministry for 8 years, and now have been pastoring the Burg Church for it's 3.5 years. So that's been a beautiful blessing, but also brings us difficulties because ministry requires things that maybe corporate America doesn't require, and that's
Right.
time, and that's a lot more um, emotional oriented things and spiritual oriented things than just tasks. What are
Behind
some
the
things,
scenes.
because you grew up as a pastor's kid?
Right.
What were your thoughts going into ministry, and where are you now? And what are some things that have helped you stay healthy in through all that?
hmm My parents have been in ministry my whole life, so I never really knew anything different. They were college pastors, seniors pastors, youth pastors, dean of students. Like they just have always been in ministry. And so, honestly, when people are like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "I don't know how to not do it." That's always been my life. So, growing up in that, you see the good and the bad, you see the hurt, you see the positive, you see the life change, and you just kind of have to choose what you focus on because the real world is hard and you do see a lot of darkness and a lot of brokenness.
Mm,
Every week people are calling, my house burnt down. How can you help? We're about to lose our this. How can you help? So if you get stuck on the negative, if you focus on that, then it can be really hard. And
mm,
I can see how pastors' kids can get drained easily. But when you choose to focus on, we are able to help them because of that. We're
right.
able to pray over them. Yes, I went to a funeral with my dad, but, seeing the blessing of it and the beauty of it, and it really has shaped me and shaped how I parent and how I teach Henley and Harper now that they're little. Like, yes, bad things are always happening, but we can choose to find the good, and in a dark situation we can choose to be the light and to be the joy because they may not feel that joy right now, but we can bring a little bit of peace and that makes the world a better place.
What do you think that we have done? What are things in marriage? I guess we don't have to talk about ourselves, but what are things in marriage that you think help people through busy seasons? Because there's seasons that require more time
Mhm.
from the pastor,
Right.
one side or the other. There's
Right.
seasons that are more taxing.
Mhm.
What are the constants that you think people who are married in ministry need to practice so that they can be healthy in all of those seasons?
I think for us, we had to learn how to prioritize each other. We had to learn how to prioritize family. There were a lot of times where before kids, we were in ministry together. You got the paycheck, but I was right there with you. Like at
Right.
summer camp, I was with you, discipling the girls, taking the girls. We always had kids in our home, whether it was playing Mario Kart, whether it was a Bible study, we were in that together. But then as kids came along, it was easy for me to feel kind of left out because I was home a lot with them by myself. Oh, Wesley's got this. I'm home alone again. Woe is me. Oh, Wesley's got this. Another conference, another. So it's easy to get drawn into that hole of sadness or feeling left out or whatever. But it just takes a little bit to find your place. Now that the girlies are, well, even in that place of, I just have a baby, what do I do? Well, you find other moms who have babies and you
Yeah,
do it
that's
together
so
because
good.
their husbands are working. Now we have two, so it was like they're a little bit older. I can get a little bit more involved. What do I do though? Where's my place? You find a place. If you're
Mm,
feeling left out and discouraged, you find your new season
mm,
because our seasons are always changing. It's not the same as it was 13 years ago, 9 years ago, even last year. We're in a different season.
right.
And so instead of just, oh, my life, no, you can get stuck in that, or you can choose to, well, who else is hurting and how can I help them?
Right.
What are other moms who, let's go to the strawberry patch, let's go to the playground, let's do something together because sometimes we are stuck at home. Instead of being stuck at home, we're making it, this is our place of comfort, this is their safe place.
Right.
And I had to do a lot of, um, instead of being bitter or frustrated or overwhelmed at these conferences you were leaving on, I was like, "Hey, can I come with you?" And we'd give our kids to the grandparents. And so now for us, I love when Wesley goes on conferences. I love when Wesley has these pastors retreats because it's kind of our date weekend. We've made time for each other in that way.
Right.
That when you have a conference coming up, we'll go together. And that's kind of our driving together or flying together. That makes it fun. So ministry has just become a new season and we're
Right.
getting to spend more time together in a different way. So
Yeah,
I love it.
there's, like you said, there's different levels to that and seasons. You can't always get to that place. But now that our kids are a little bit older, we're
Hmm.
blessed to have both of our families close by.
Right.
we can do those things. There is seasons to where have had to be more at home
Mm-hmm.
because the baby's as a newborn or is
Right.
young, and
Right.
having to stay home and take care of them. And I think that it's easy on either side of a marriage, especially in ministry, to become the victim.
Mm-hmm.
So where it's, well, they get to do all these fun things and I have to stay here and do this. Or, you flip the script and put the person who's working and they say, well, I'm working all hard all the time and I'm just coming home and you're just resting and hanging out with the kids, and that's not difficult. And we have to remind ourselves that both roles are equally important and equally taxing in different ways.
Right.
And while it is difficult to pastor a church and to oversee budgets and organizations and build things, it's also extremely difficult to keep your sanity when you have two small children running around the
Right.
house, destroying things, wanting to eat things. Then you make it for them, then they don't want to eat that; they want something else. And we have to make sure that we're both reminding ourselves of our roles. And I just want to take a second to remind remind the pastors just for a moment, like, it's easy for your worth to become wrapped up in your work. And you have to quickly remind yourself that your number one call is to your family. And you'll never be a better pastor than you are a father, or a better pastor than you are a husband. And I think that's something that I learned the hard way in some
Mm-hmm.
seasons, to where I was working so hard the first year of Henley's life. I was not nearly as present as I was for the first year of Harper's.
Right.
And I was I'm grateful for a wife who will quickly remind me, and also a God who will remind you, like, what's the most important thing.
Right.
And I know that I'm always a better pastor, I'm a better leader, I'm a better employer, I'm a better preacher when my home is healthy.
Right.
So make sure and remind yourself every day that your worth doesn't come from your work, but your worth comes from the way that you lead at home. And that's not just for pastors, that's for anybody out there, because we'll get wrapped up in our provision, and your provision isn't your worth to the relationship to your spouse or to your relationship to your children. They don't comprehend money. They don't care about that. They just
Right.
want to know that you love them
Right.
and that you're present.
Quality time.
And I think that's important. That quality
Mm-hmm.
time changes everything. Right now, Henley loves to play Uno. She loves to have
She's the Uno
pillow
champion.
fights. And I have to be intentional that if I'm not home most of the day, I'm home and doing something intentional with her before she goes to bed.
Right.
So
And if they do start acting out, I look at the day and I'm like, oh, we didn't spend much quality time. Okay, let's slow things down. We were busy doing all the things, and they were mostly good things, but some days we just need to slow down because they need quality time.
right, 100%, and we need quality time
For
with
sure.
each other, and you have to schedule that. You have to make that happen, because what will happen is when you go through a difficult season in life, um, those things will be revealed quickly.
For sure.
So we don't have to talk about this long. July 26th, we found out we
Mhm.
lost a baby,
Right.
13 weeks pregnant.
I woke up at 4:30, and it it was like my body felt funny, and it was like a rush that, like, I needed to use the bathroom. Like, I thought I peed myself in the bed, for lack of better words. And so, which, when you're pregnant, that happens sometimes. Like, bladder control is a real issue. So I thought, oh, I have to run to the bathroom. So I ran to the bathroom, and the toilet was just full of blood. And so I knew 4:30 in the morning, I just kind of started to weep. I had a peace about it, though, if that makes sense. Like, okay, this is it. Our baby's gone. And, I don't know if it happened that night or the day before when the baby actually died, but we found out Friday morning.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a very eye-opening, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching moment.
Yep.
We had already planned to go to the beach on Sunday afternoon. We ended up
Mhm.
leaving Friday night
Right.
to go to the beach for a week with our family. What are some things that you've learned? We're obviously still fresh in it. Hasn't even been like a month barely,
Right.
but what are some things that you've learned in this season, maybe to encourage somebody who's walking through that or
Mhm.
who has walked through that
Mm-hmm.
as we move forward?
Yeah. So when it first happened, that Friday morning, I was running to the bathroom every 10 minutes because I was still heavily bleeding. I didn't want to wake you up because Wesley just let you sleep another few hours. There was nothing you could do to help. I didn't want you stressing or pacing or, whatever. because there was nothing you could do. It just, nobody, like the OB wasn't open to call or that kind of thing. So I just had to wait it out. So from 4:30 to 8 o'clock, I was by myself, mourning, grieving, crying, angry, frustrated, all the emotions, praying, crying out to the Lord. And I went and slept on the couch. Well, laid on the couch. There was no sleeping, but, and just, so I got to spend a good 4 hours talking to the Lord. And once 8 o'clock hit, I called the OB. We rushed to the ER. And so once I got to the ER and the doctor came in, ultrasound, they told us, your baby did die. And by that time, I'd already had such a peace about it. It was like 1:32 because I'd already cried all my tears. I'd already been crying for 6+ hours. There's so many emotions involved. You don't know what to expect or how you're going to react. But it was beautiful that we had a lot of texts from our family, but also from friends from church. And they reached out. They gave us space, of course, but they reached out and were just saying, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. And that just brought such a peace for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say she didn't wake me up because I would have been angry, or I would immediately tried to fix it and gone into panic and survival mode. And she knows that. And so she had a moment to deal with, to go before the Lord before we went in to fix everything. Because there's usually a person who needs to take a break just for a second, and then there's the person who immediately goes into fix everything mode. And you know who that is just by us talking.
Yep. But I think that's how life should be anyway. You shouldn't immediately run to people to fix your issues.
100%.
That was my time with the Lord.
Right.
And we were able to talk and pray and just talk. I talked to him, and he spoke back to me and gave me verses and songs. And that was my special time with him that he knew I needed.
Yeah. And so that day was tough for us, but there is very much so a supernatural peace that we've been walking through.
For sure.
The Bible always talks, it talks all over the place about different things that can encourage you in these moments. Isaiah 57 talks about God taking people early. It's because he's protecting them from something. We don't know what that looked like, what the development looked like of the child, but we do know where that baby is and that one day we'll see them again.
Right.
So I think sometimes it's easy to wallow in a valley, but we've made a decision not to build a home in a place that we don't belong. And that's a valley. That's a place of just mourning and brokenness. And yes, it's okay to feel that. It's okay to not be okay. But it's not okay to stay there. And we just choose not to stay there. We choose not to live in that brokenness forever, but allow that to motivate us to now minister to people, communicate with people, love on people. If that's something that you're walking through, we'd love for you to message either one of us, find us on Facebook or something, and we'd love to pray for you because it's something that's a lot more common than I knew. But it never makes it any easier just because it's common. And for me, I think that it's been an opportunity for me to shift my perspective in an even healthier way towards my wife and my kids. Typically, when you go through difficult things, your priorities are more revealed. Your heart is always clear when things get harder. And it makes you not only see where you're at in a different light, but also see the state of your relationships in a different place. And I think that this has been something that, while has been traumatic, has also brought our family closer.
Definitely.
And made us stronger in our relationship with each other, our relationship with our kids, and our relationship with the Lord. So
just realizing that we need to spend more quality time together because fall is crazy. Back to school, all the fall things, all the events and weddings. And so fun, all the fun things. But we also need to remember that we need to slow down.
Yeah.
That's what makes us stronger as a family unit because seasons come and go, but we are here together and we're going to go through it together. So
absolutely. And I think that that's something that's a good common theme through all three of these different chapters of our life, and something good to end on is making sure that no matter how busy your season is, whether you're far away from each other and you're fulfilling the mission that you've been given in that season, and maybe it's not even in a relationship, or it's something that you're walking through a high tension or high difficulty or high time requirement season from one of you, and you're married, you're in ministry, you're in a high level of workforce, whatever that requires a lot of your time and effort, or you're in a season to where you're walking through something that was highly difficult. If you'll just take a moment, allow yourself to feel it, and then get together and have healthy conversation about it at
Mm-hmm.
some point. Some people need more time than others. Communication is never going to do anything but make things better.
Right.
Even if it's confrontational, it's going to make things better if it's done in a healthy way, because change is always necessary for
And
us
I
to grow.
don't love confrontation, but
But
that
it's
brings
necessary,
growth
right?
and
Yeah.
honesty and
And it doesn't mean we're yelling at each other, we're frustrated. It just means, hey, this is where I am and I need to tell you what I'm feeling.
right.
So thank you guys for listening. We hope that you were able to gain something just from this conversation. We're grateful for the opportunity just to share a little bit about our story.
Yeah.
And we're excited for the future chapters together.
Yeah.